What if I told you the biggest student loan mistake healthcare professionals make happens before they ever take out a loan? Not during repayment, not during graduation, but before school even starts. Because most students think their only option is to borrow whatever the school costs. So they choose expensive programs, sign the paperwork, and hope they'll figure it out later. Then they're sitting on 150, 200 plus grand in student loans, wondering how it happened. Here's what many students don't realize. There are ways to dramatically reduce or even eliminate what you borrow through smarter school choices, scholarships, and even military options that can completely pay for your school. The earlier you understand these strategies, the more powerful they become. So in today's episode, I'm going to break down how to pay for a healthcare graduate school without borrowing hundreds of thousands of dollars. And today we're talking about one of the most overlooked financial decisions in healthcare, and that's choosing your graduate program wisely. Additionally, we're going to talk about how to pay for your program in scholarships, even if you have chosen a more expensive program. So let's get into the most important part of this episode, which is how to choose your program wisely. When you're comparing schools, don't fall into the trap of thinking that prestige is more important than everything, that you have to apply for the Ivy League school, that you have to go to a private school. Really, most employers, all they care about is that you've gone to an accredited program, that you can pass your boards exam, and that you have clinical specialty skills. And so here's what I recommend focusing on as you're applying to different schools. Focus on programs that have average to below average rates even for tuition, but that have a strong boards pass rate. So 85 to 90% above is what you kind of want to be looking for. Reasonable tuition compared to national averages, and look at in-state public schools when they're an option because they'll often be cheaper than comparable private schools. I work with people who paid 2 to 3 times the amount for PT school I did, but again, we're in the same position making the exact same amount of money. So here's one really simple financial rule I want you to try to follow. Try not to borrow more than your first year expected salary. So for example, a physical therapist national average right now is close to around $80,000. And so for PT school, the goal will be to not borrow more than $80,000. And for medical careers, it's going to be around $215,000 to $275,000 for your first year earnings. That's kind of the lower to middle amount depending on the specialty. And so you don't want to borrow more than that $215,000 to $275,000 for your program. And so for PT, if you're looking at a program that costs $150,000 and your starting salary is closer to $75,000, then that should be a pretty big red flag for you. Now, I know this sounds simple on paper, but in real life, PT schools average around $100,000 to $120,000. And so you're probably asking, how the heck am I supposed to find a program with $75,000? And so the question is, does this rule really apply or make sense? And that's what we're going to dive into with scholarships, whether it's state scholarships, scholarships specific to programs, and even the military as an option to completely pay off your school. Now, quick pause, because these huge decisions for school are exactly where I see individuals make the biggest mistakes with their money. Because once you move past a theory into actual program decisions, comparing schools, it gets complicated really fast. And most students are doing this alone while trying to make a 6-figure decision all by themselves. And this is exactly what I help healthcare professionals walk through, whether it's choosing the right school, navigating student loans, or setting up a budget. We want to help you make a confident, realistic decision that fits well for you. And so if you want help building your personal plan, feel free to book a free 15-minute consult in the link in the description, or you can check out fiscalclinician.com and book from there. Now you've chosen a financially reasonable program, or even if you haven't, you can employ some of the strategies we're about to talk about. And so the next step becomes reducing what you actually have to borrow. So let's talk about something students often completely overlook: ways to pay for school that are not loans. So the first thing we want you to look at is scholarships. Now, the ones that are going to give you the best bet for getting the most money are scholarships that are from professional organizations. So if you're a PT, you could look at the APTA. If you're an OT, the AOTA, or you can look at nursing associations or medical associations if you're a physician. And again, the nice thing about these types of scholarships is there is a smaller application pool, so you have a better chance of getting the payout from the scholarships. It might also be looking at private foundations and healthcare organizations and minority or merit-based programs or scholarships if those apply to you. Now, some schools also offer tuition discounts for academic performance or research assistantships or teaching assistant positions in graduate programs. Especially these teachers assistants programs are incredible because they might be able to pay 50 to 100% of your tuition and give you a stipend as you go through school. But if you guys can find some kind of graduate assistantship program to be able to pay your way through school, that's one of the best ways to do it. Now let's talk about military health professions scholarship. This is a really powerful funding option if you qualify and if you're open-minded to the military paying for school. The Health Professions Scholarship Program, or the HPSP, and this is for medical, dental school, and some advanced healthcare roles. You can also look into it specifically for PT and OT. I've known some people who have gone to it for that as well. But it's a great program because there's service commitments through the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, and they'll typically cover your entire tuition, a monthly living stipend, and they'll cover fees and educational expenses in many cases. In exchange, you commit to service in the military for a certain amount of years. Usually it's a year for year. So for example, if the military paid 4 years of your medical school, then you would have 4 years of payback as a physician in the military. It's not for everyone, but financially it can dramatically reduce, or this program often completely eliminates any debt that you'd be looking to pay. There's also a program called the Health Professionals Loan Repayment Program, which is the HPLRP. And this is a program that if you've already graduated and you're carrying around a certain amount of debt, then you do year for year service and they'll pay $40,000 to $60,000 per year of service that you give them. Now, all these military programs are very competitive, but they are looking for more and more people to recruit. And so I'll put a link in the description directly to both of these programs. But the big picture on scholarships and the military specifically is all these programs share one big theme. You're trading money today for service tomorrow. And if you understand that trade clearly and you're willing to move a little bit with the military, this can be an excellent choice for paying off a huge amount of school that allows you to have so much more financial freedom and independence later. Now let's talk about the I only got into one school trap. I've talked to multiple graduates who later said, I really wish I would have taken a gap year, because people often feel trapped once they get into a school, especially if they've only gotten into one, that they have to go there no matter the cost of the program. I think this is a really big mistake because honestly, taking a gap year could reduce how much you need to borrow. It can help you save money to cash flow some of your years. It can improve your resume and application. You can look even better and then get into multiple schools, one that might be a better fit for you. And it can help you get into a more affordable program in the next cycle. And that one decision can save you tens of thousands of dollars over time. And so if you only got into one school, it's incredibly expensive. You always have a choice on what you can do. And it's okay. You can take some time to work and then hopefully get into a less expensive program next cycle. And we covered this in another episode, but I'm just going to quickly go over the hidden cost of location for your school, because another major factor that students overlook is their location, because the true cost of the program isn't just the tuition, it's the tuition plus whatever you have to pay in housing and transportation. And sometimes, even if it looks like a really small tuition, you end up living in California or something, and the cost of living is insane, and you would have paid a lot less had you gone somewhere else where the cost of living is a little lower. And so a cheap school in a high-cost city can easily end up costing you much more than a slightly more expensive school in an affordable area. And so Ask yourself, is there any program that I can get into where I could live with family? Can I reduce housing costs somehow by living with other students or other people? And is there a lower cost of living option where I can get into? And this is another great point with if you only got into that one school, it's super expensive in California and you're going to have a high cost of living, it might be a good idea to just wait until the next cycle. Because housing alone can dramatically change your total debt burden and make it so much more expensive for your school. And living with family friends is actually how I was able to cash flow all of my physical therapy school. And so this is a great thing to think about because housing, transportation, and food are going to be your three biggest costs. And so you want to take those decisions really seriously. So here's the biggest takeaways from today. Your student loan outcome is largely decided long before you ever step foot in a classroom. Choosing the right school and the right program and understanding funding options can save you years of financial stress and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So this isn't about avoiding an investment into your education. It's about making sure that investment actually makes sense for the type of career that you're going into. So if you found this episode helpful, share it with someone who's applying to graduate school right now, because this is one of those conversations that can change the trajectory of someone's financial future. Thanks so much for listening to the Fiscal Clinician podcast, and we'll see you in the next episode.